Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So, for the duration of several performances of 433, Mark and I will talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I'm always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. 433 episodes. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah, we've done a lot of these things, and now we are going to make you listen to us not talk about Nintendo at all. Thank you so much to everyone who wrote in with suggestions coming in. Some of them, some suggestions coming in after the bell, I gotta say.
But, after the Tuesday deadline, you're saying?
That's right, yes.
Well, we are, if nothing but not gregarious fellows, and of course we included them.
Yes, we will be spending the entirety of today using your suggested topics for 433 segments. Before we get into that, just very quickly, my copy of Sonic Forces, would you like to borrow it? You know you can if you want to. All you gotta do is email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. And give us a mailing address so we can send you my copy of Sonic Forces. But Mark, also there's Untitled Goose Game is in there. Look, you all know the drill at this point. If you don't, we'll get more into it in every other episode of the show. But we have got a mammoth task ahead of us. We've got like 433s to record. So let's do it. Let's get into the main topic. All 433s, baby. And I guess before we get into it, there were we had a couple suggestions to talk about 433 performances or to rank them, including one email here from Edward. Edward writes, you two have listened to more renditions of 433 than most people. Why don't you do a segment of 43 where you rank the different versions of 433? I realize it might be hard to rank performances where no instruments are played, but you only have to keep the conversation going for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. I believe in you. You can do it. Thank you. I believe in us too. I don't think we have more than like 10 seconds to say about any performance of 433, which is for the purposes of this show, I'm really just looking for one that ends in applause, and so it can be like an audio cue. For this show, this episode right here, we are not going to be using a performance of 433. We're going to be using a stopwatch that goes off after 4 minutes and 33 seconds, just to really keep this regimented, arbitrary amount of time going. I guess I don't want to speak for both of us. Mark, do you have a favorite performance of 433?
No, I really don't. They, like you said, if they have applause at the end, it's a 10 out of 10 in my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, is it different if you're using 433 for something not recording this podcast in this very warped way that we use this piece of music? But I don't think it's a piece that really shouldn't be recorded. It should just be experienced in a concert hall. Like, you have to be sitting there feeling awkward. You have to hear the sound of your own blood coursing through your veins. Like, that's what 433 is all about. All right, Mark, let us start our first performance of 433.
Oh wait, before we get in. Oh wait, actually, never mind. It doesn't matter. Let's just go for it. I'm ready. All
right. So our first 433 topic comes from Peter. Peter writes, tell me everything you know about Sweden. This is a tough one. I gotta say, I'm stumped right off the bat.
I feel like most that I know about Sweden comes from pop music and like bands that I like who originate from Sweden, like ABBA. Great example. Yeah.
Great example. Maybe only example.
No. I do. I have two other ones that I can think of offhand. So I really like the Radio Department and the Marionettes, and they're like two bands that are more modern than ABBA, but they have this kind of like a little bit of a throwback sound where, you know, they're using like electronic drums and it's kind of like this like wall of noise a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's pop music. I'm really into it. It's so I guess like maybe music from Sweden is probably what I know most about Sweden.
I would say that like the next thing, like yeah, music for me too. But I only really know the one example. I would be interested to
Mm-hmm.
explore these other two. But like, is it a cop out to go immediately to IKEA to like just immediately jump to IKEA?
No, I don't think it's a cop out at all because I had actually forgotten about IKEA, but that's a great example. That's probably like the cultural touchstone from Sweden that most people in the United States experience on a regular basis, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and especially when like you are younger and just like starting out and trying to figure out like how to put things into an apartment. God forbid you should ever find yourself owning a house. Like you just got to go to IKEA and like load up. Do you ever wonder if like that is what the experience of like living in Sweden is just like everyone has IKEA furniture
I
more
do
than
wonder that.
yeah.
I wonder if people in like Sweden do not use IKEA. Like IKEA is not
Mm,
actually like
it's like
something that
gauche.
Swedish
Yeah.
yes, that Swedish people use. Do you
I
think that
mm.
oh, I was going to ask if you think that when Muppet movies are shown in Sweden that like the Swedish chef is beloved? Do you think that like they cut those parts out? Do you think they change it to the American chef and he like has like, is wearing like a gun holster?
This is a great point. I feel like the Swedish chef in Sweden is probably a borderline hate crime, you know? Like cuz like he really is just saying nonsense, birdie birdie bork bork bork, and now I'm perpetuating it, of course. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I mean, we already have Sam Eagle, right? Like he is the hyper American Muppet.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess I was thinking of, like just this past week, online, like Twitter was aflutter about Big Bird and all of like Big Bird's
Right.
cousins, like the Big Birds from all the different countries. So I wondered
Big
if
Bird
like Swedish
variants.
Chef, I mean, maybe, and this is not to impugn Sweden at all, but like maybe they're not concerned, the filmmakers aren't concerned about like Sweden in particular because the size of the market is not enough, but they're like
Mm.
worried about people boycotting the Muppet movies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's likely. What do you think the Sweden snowy place, right? Snows there in the winter.
Yeah, I believe that to be true.
I'm just trying to because like honestly as we've talked we've talked a lot Mark about like cultural touchstones of Sweden and like the sort of American perspective of Sweden culturally speaking. But I don't really know much about the actual place.
Yeah, I don't either. I like, is it, uh, yeah, I'm just purely speculating here. So my geography is not great, but like, I feel like it's not as far north as Finland. Do we feel like that's true? Like, because Finland is part of like
Mm.
the Arctic Circle. Is Sweden in the Arctic Circle?
Yeah, I feel like they're all part of those like finger countries that like come that like form that like peninsula of like just cold European countries. Um yeah, and I mean it's tough cuz in my head I keep getting blocked by Switzerland. Like I'm trying to access
Mm-hmm.
Sweden and I'm like, yeah, mountains, the hills are alive, all like and you're like, no, Patrick. That's Austria first of all.
That's a good point. Does Sweden have mountains, or is it mostly just like flat plains? I don't know. I don't. I'm
I know
embarrassed.
Finland is a lot of flat plains.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think they're the same country. I think Finland and Sweden are the same country. I think that's right.
I'm a little bit embarrassed that this is our first one. Oh well, we'll never
Oh,
know
I
for
guess
sure.
we will never know. All right. So our next topic comes from Dominic, and Dominic writes in with 13 different suggestions, or at least we've whittled it down to 13 different suggestions. I'm going to run the random number generator right now to determine what we're going to talk about. Number 3, we are going to be talking about guilty pleasure music. Mark, do you ever feel guilty about the music that you listen to and that you enjoy?
Um, I think I did in high school, like when I was
Mm-hmm.
more concerned about being cool. But I've like long ago crushed the threshold of like not at all being cool, and so I feel there's no sense of societal pressure as to like what I listen to because there's no expectation that I will be like hip or with it.
Yeah, as evidenced by the fact that you just used the phrases "hip" or "and with it." Yeah, I would actually say that my most embarrassing music was the music that I listened to in high school when I was very concerned about being cool. Because
Mm-hmm.
I was a big ska kid in high school. Went through a whole phase of like any music that's not ska is not good. Um, and like that's all part of like just like finding your identity and like asserting your
Totally.
identity. And like I played bass, so like I was looking for an opportunity to like play in any bands that I could. And I guess every every band has a bass player, so I don't know why I kept putting myself in ska bands, but I did. So yeah, I would say that that's my biggest guilty pleasure has got to be like the music that still feels transcendent to me, which is like Real Big Fish is still like, to me, they're still incredible.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I wasn't really into ska, but one thing that I have found recently is like there's a lot of songs from when I was in high school,
Hmm.
or around that era that like at the time I did not like, but I hear them now. Like Matchbox 20 or something like that, where like
Yeah.
I didn't like it at the time, but I hear it now, and because I associate it so strongly with that time in my life, that I do like it and I do sing along because I'm like, this song like it totally brings me back.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I also feel that way about like some of the poppier stuff from when, and I don't think this is it's almost a guilty pleasure that is so like mainstreamified that like you can't really feel guilty about it. But like, when I hear like 90s, late 90s, early 2000s In Sync or Britney Spears, I'm like, yeah. Even though it's something that while I was in high school I probably would have made fun of. But like,
Totally.
now I'm like unironically, or I don't know, unironically, there's still an element of irony to it, just into it. But I feel like that is a sort of universal thing among our peers, right? Like any music that would have been guilty pleasure music as we were growing up, we've just embraced as unironic pleasure. Is there anything you
Yeah.
listen
And
to now that you're like, ugh?
nothing. Well, see, nothing that I would feel like guilty that I feel like guilty about liking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we talk ad nauseum about like Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals, about like all that kind of stuff. I've always loved Disney musicals, like
Yeah.
but now like I have no shame about talking about it because I feel like now that I am as old as I am, I just feel like guilty pleasures, like unless you're murdering somebody, I don't think guilty pleasures exist. Like if you're doing it because it brings you joy, then like that's great. That's all I need.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll push back against that just a little bit in that, like, there are, I've got that Weezer podcast, which again, we just did a new episode for the new record that came out. But like, there are elements of Weezer's like lyrics for sure that I'm like, oh, I no longer identify with that. I'm embarrassed by it. And I feel the same way about a lot of like Ben Folds lyrics. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love Ben Folds and Ben Folds 5. But like, my fandom is a little bit dampened just by like, some of the like posturing and some of the like, like rocking the suburbs, like woe is me, poor white boy
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't relate to it anymore, which is maybe different than being a guilty pleasure.
No, but I think that is a good point because like not all art ages well, and so
Right.
yeah, that is a good point.
How do you deal with getting real heavy right at the end here? Michael Jackson. Like, are there Michael Jackson tunes that you still listen to? Do you let that affect your listening either way?
Yeah, I do. I have a difficult time separating art from artist, and so I just kind of like put away Michael Jackson stuff. Like I just don't listen to it anymore.
Important for Mark to wrap up that last point. Me too, by the way. With the exception of She Wants Me Back, I feel like Jackson 5 is a little bit different. Anyway, we can't keep talking about it. The next suggestion comes from Tiago. Tiago says, it's a one-word email. It just says otters. Mark, we are talking about otters.
Are otters the perfect animal? I
They
think they
might
might
be.
be.
They're so cute. Look, I don't know what happened when like the culture became aware of otters as like a cute thing, but I think we all get it now, right? That wasn't a forever thing.
Right.
What what caused that? Why do we all know that otters are the best?
I don't know because I do feel like in elementary school and stuff, there were always the people who they went to like the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and so they had otter shirts. Maybe
Sure.
actually that's what it is, right? Maybe it's like the internet and the proliferation of otter
Yes.
related things. Because if you are in a place where like otters are not readily available because not every zoo has otters. Um, so maybe you had seen pictures of otters, and yes, like otters are cute just on principle, just like looking at them. But I
Yeah.
think seeing otters in action and being like adorable and holding hands and stacking cups, like that's what really sells it. And so I think like it's the same thing that the internet did for cats, the internet did for otters, where everybody, no matter where you're from, no matter whether otters are native to your state or country or not, everybody can now fully appreciate otters in all of their glory.
I think otters are also uncomplicated, right? Like there's something about the otter that like it's not I was trying to figure out beavers the other day and like why they build dams, and it's like they do it so they can divert water and like fish more easily, and I'm like, okay, beaver, you're too confusing. Like I don't get you, beaver. How do you know to build? But an otter is just like an adorable sea cat that floats on its back and holds hands so it doesn't get separated from the other otters that it loves.
It's just nice. It's just a nice animal. And I know that that's probably not true to like the creatures below the otter in the food chain, you know, so like the clams
Sure.
or whatever, those otters are like breaking open with rocks so they can, you know, like rip them apart with their
Right.
little otter teeth. Like probably not as big of otter fans, but for everybody else, like otters are so non-threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that they come in sea and river varieties. I think that's nice. Um, there is a moment in an episode of Futurama. I believe it is the one where Fry gets brainworms, and they make him smarter, and he learns how to play the holophoner. And he plays a piece of music for Leela that is then, of course, visualized because the holophoner makes a visualization along with music. And in one part of it, he and Leela are otters, and he's like an orange otter, and she's a purple otter, and they're like swimming it through the sea, and then they like jump up and sort of like touch their feet against each other to like spring backwards in like a flip. And that image of them like silhouetted by the moon and like sort of making a heart shape with their otter bodies was my background on my computer for a really long time. So yeah, I mean, this talk about otters is just it fills my heart with joy.
Also, when you're talking about them being uncomplicated, like otters make sense like physically. Like they have four legs. There's nothing weird like mermaid going on, but like below the surface where their body just like forms into a tail or anything. Like they have the legs. They're like they're like sea dogs or sea cats. They're just they're perfect.
Yeah, and they got those little whiskers. Mark, you mentioned that they crack open clams with rocks, which means they're also using tools.
I mean I believe
Simple
that
tools.
is true, but of course we don't of course we don't fact check anything we say on 433. Rarely
No.
do we fact check anything we say on this podcast, so I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that's what they eat. Or
I do like that on the podcast in general, we're usually at least researched, and then allow for a debug. I think we should go out on the record right now and say that these 43s will not be debugged. No one can send in any corrections.
I think that's totally fair.
Would you, if possible, keep an otter as a pet? Feels cruel, doesn't it? Because you don't have access to water.
I don't, but like in a perfect world where I could, yes, I would want to. But do you think they get lonely? Do you think they're like guinea pigs where they're like, where experts are like, you need to keep a bunch of guinea pigs and you need to set that guinea pig on your lap and you should be brushing its hair while you are watching TV because guinea pigs need that time? Like, I think I could provide some of that for an otter, but I don't know that I could be there all the time.
Yeah, well, especially with the hand holding thing, like, I guess we will never know. Our next suggestion comes from Lizzie. Lizzie sent us 3 possible topics. I'm running the random number generator. Number 1, we are talking about books. The prompt is, do you read often? What kind of books do you like to read? Etc., etc.
I've been reading a lot since during the pandemic. Like as a kid, I loved to read. And as an adult, I would still read, but not as often as like I would like to. But the pandemic, I think like just like not having to commute and just having more time on my hands, I've been reading a lot more books than I used to. I really like fiction. I really like mysteries. I'm a sucker for like Agatha Christie stories.
Yeah. And have you been reading a lot of mysteries in the pandemic, or?
Yeah, I started with like some like nonfiction books. Like I read one by Eric Larson at the start about the Oh darn. Sinking of the Lusitania, I think is. I can't remember
That's
what
a
it's
thing.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I can't remember what the book is called, but it was like really interesting. I'd read some of his other books before. And then I read Into Thin Air, which was my first time reading that Jack Krakauer book. And that was
Mhm.
another one where it was like in my head, like what scaling Mount Everest was versus like what it actually is are like so dramatically different.
That's cool. I wish I always wish I was a better reader. I've got like a tough attention span for reading. And both my sister and my mother are like voracious readers, read a ton, right? And are therefore like very fast at it. And I feel like I'm always just slow, and it's always been difficult for me to, it's something that I've worked on and gotten better at, like just reading comprehension. Um, but like yeah, I read what I'm reading right now, and we're both sort of doing this, is that we're both like all in on the Star Wars High Republic publishing initiative, which we were just talking about before we were rolling. But yeah, so like I'm just sort of giving myself the green light to read any level of these Star Wars books. I read the junior novel, which I was initially like put off by the label of junior novel, because I'm like, that's for babies, but I'm like, no, you're a baby, read the book. But I'm really enjoying this.
We also, and for me, not as much as I used to a few years ago, but we also read a fair amount of comic books.
Yeah, that's right, we do. Yes, yeah, that's right. And I miss reading them, as because I used to probably read like, I don't know, 20-25 titles a week. Like I used to read a lot of comics, and that's gone way down now. I'm mostly just reading Star Wars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, with like the occasional Marvel or DC thing thrown in there. Is there anything that any comics that you're reading right now?
No, I'm also just reading the Star Wars comics. Yeah, like during, I think it kind of like rolled over from 2019 when the Mandalorian first came out, and we were all hyped for Rise of Skywalker, and that like carried over to for into 2020 for me because I was looking for something that was just like relaxing and bringing me joy. So I read a
Yeah.
lot of Star Wars novels in 2020, and so having like this High Republic thing totally just like completely rolled right into that. It's just continued to like feed the addiction.
Yeah, and I've also I've enjoyed when I've gone on Teen Creeps, the podcast Teen Creeps, and I am their Lois Duncan correspondent. So started with or not started with, but eventually read I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is of course nothing like that movie. You've been on Teen Creeps as well, right?
Yeah, we talked about like a Titanic book.
Oh, we're both overdue for another time on Teen Creeps, which is a great show. They're doing a like an '80s fantasy month right now.
Mm.
So they read like the Neverending Story and stuff like that. So that's super cool. Yeah, I don't
How
know.
do you
Any Go ahead.
how do you do with the classics? Because I like
Classics are tough.
I feel like for a while I was like all in on it. This was like, a decade ago where I was like, yes, I'm like going to read these. I want to read these, but I've completely fallen out of it. And I think maybe it's just because like, oh, well,
I guess we will
whatever.
never know. All right. Our next suggestion comes from John. John sent us 3 suggestions. We are random number generating. We are going to be ranking the species types of species. And I think the suggestions that he gave here are mammals, reptiles, birds, insects, amphibians. Does that list seem complete to you?
To be honest, Patrick, biology, not one of my strong suits.
Okay. So the different kinds of vertebrates, right, are mammals, reptiles, birds, amphibians, and fish. So let's take insect out of there and put fish in,
Okay.
and we can rank vertebrates. Because if we open it up to like invertebrates, then things get weird, and it's like, where do you
Amoebas.
rank? Yeah, where do you rank like a sea sponge? Like I don't care.
Right.
So mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, and amphibians. Do we need any definitional exploration here, or do we understand all these animal types?
I feel comfortable diving in whether I understand it or not.
That's a spirit, Mark. uh,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
so for me, I am going to. It's a tough call between. Actually, it's not that tough call. I think birds are at the lowest for me. I just don't
Mm.
particularly like birds, and I know that that is a broad statement about a enormous variety of creature. But when I think of like which one of these do I want to spend time around, bird is very low on the list.
My mother has a very strong aversion to birds. She's never explained why. Anytime I ask her, she's like, "I just don't like them." So I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the end of the is that she just doesn't like birds. But so from as a result, I think I dislike birds less because I'm like, oh,
Mm.
the bird bugs my mother. So like, I'm sort of into it. I
Yeah,
think for me,
that
the
makes
the
total sense.
bottom of the list is going to be more along the lines of like amphibians and reptiles. Also fish. I feel like all three of them are like bottom of the barrel. Mammals number one, right?
I think mammals are number one, if nothing else, because like mammals, are cute in a way that
Yes.
I know that there are people who, like own snakes and lizards and really like them. I am not those
You don't
people.
buy it. You don't buy
Birds,
it.
I don't want birds as a pet. Are you kidding me? Fish are fine. Fish are totally fine. Some of them are very beautiful, but and then amphibians. So I would put amphibians not at the bottom only because there's something very fun to me
Yes.
about the fact that they like are crossovers, right?
Yeah.
They're like the Marvel Cinematic Universe of animals, of vertebrates.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, there is something very cool, very appealing about like an animal that starts out as one thing and then becomes something different. Like that's cool. And as far as vertebrates go, that's the only one that's like that. Right. The
Right.
rest of
And
these, yeah, forget it.
also but also just to give another like shout out to mammals is that
Shout them
mammals
out.
can be like so weird, right? You got like the duck-billed platypus and you're like, how is this a mammal? But technically it is. Like then you
What I
got
mean, what else would
monkeys.
it be though? Like it lays eggs, but like and has a bill, like a leathery bill, and venomous foot spurs. Mark, they have foot
uh,
spurs.
at the San Diego Zoo, they have like a couple of platypus, and in order to see it, there was like this long line, and then they're in this little like enclosure because they are nocturnal, and so they make it seem like it's night during the day, so that way they'll come out. But the platypus were like only, I would say, maybe like at most like a foot long, and for whatever reason, I was expecting them to be like beaver sized.
Yeah, building dams in a way that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Oh, and the aforementioned otters. I mean, it's
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Big shout
and
out.
also like, yeah, you're saying there's so much variety and like you've got the whole category of aquatic mammals, and like so mammals can get like super weird. Also, there are mammals that fly, bats. Like, I don't know. I feel like mammals just have it all. Plus, they're warm and soft. Most of them. Like, if we're just going on cuddleability alone, mammals
Yeah.
got to take the number one spot.
It's true. So I think for me, I would
Hmm.
go mammals, then probably fish and amphibians. It's real close. And then reptiles and then birds at the bottom.
So I'll go mammals at the top for sure, and then a four-way tie for last place. I just look. I've never had a fish of my own. I guess we will never know. Man, every time that happens, I can't wait to stop that beeping. Is it really loud on your end too?
It's piercing. It's not really loud, but it like is a register that definitely makes itself known.
Okay, next up, we are taking a suggestion from Daniel, and random number generator says we are going to talk about how lame we were in high school. So again, I was in ska bands.
I think I was like an appropriate amount of lame. Like I was embarrassed of myself, like all that kind of stuff. But but I got along fine with people. Like I wasn't picked
Mhm.
on, I wasn't bullied. Like I was liked well enough.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of high school is finding the lanes that you can travel in and just kind of sticking
Mhm.
to like I think if you're I was about to say something that is not true. I was going to say, I think if you're being bullied, you're hanging out in the wrong circles, which is definitely not true. I'm not blaming bullying victims, but like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't. I spent a lot of my time in high school hanging out with the orchestra dorks and with the theater nerds. So like, it didn't I didn't feel at any point like I was in a place where people were like cooler than me or like had a status above me that was something I couldn't attain eventually.
Yeah, I think like my biggest regrets from high school are all aesthetic choices. Um, I wore glasses from second grade until I was in my early 20s when I got like LASIK eye surgery, and not that like I'm gonna have to wear glasses again because my eyes are so bad. But the choice of glasses at the time, like let's just say that like Drew Carey was like the
Yeah,
look
there
that
we
I
go.
aspired towards.
Thick frames, thick lenses, all of that.
Very thick, and like my eyesight was so bad that like my glasses were like really thick, and so all it did was like accentuate the problem. Like it accentuated how thick the glasses were instead of like doing anything to mitigate that.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm sure that there are some aesthetic disasters in my clothing choices for sure. But mostly I think I wasn't thinking about that. Like I just wasn't engaging in like anything along those lines. It just like wasn't part of how I thought of myself and therefore not anything I put any thought into.
Hmm.
Uh so I'm sure it's embarrassing to look back on, but like I also don't look back on myself in high school that much. I don't find it to
Yeah,
be super productive.
yeah, I totally agree. Although I I'm trying to think like in high school I was like in like I did like journalism, I did like academic
Mhm.
decathlon, I did theater tech, so I was like hanging out with like the theater kids, but kind of like on the periphery. Um, yeah, it's a little bit all over the place.
The theater tech crowd is always an interesting bunch, right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, I drove I drove a Volkswagen Beetle, but it was like black with like black interior. So I would like drive up for one of the performances, and I was dressed for theater tech. So I was like wearing all black, in this like black Beetle in with like
yeah.
black interior. And so it was definitely like a mood for sure.
Um. it- So one of the things that happened that well, like one of the defining things of my high school experience was we had this great theater director who'd been there for years and years and years, and he left after my sophomore year, and like sort of left a program that was like hyper ambitious, and all the kids wanted to like work really hard and live up to this like the legacy of Ron Parker, right? And the teacher who came in next was like new out of college and I think we as a theater program put her through hell, being like, no, we all stay here every night until 9 o'clock working on the sets, and like we all take this super seriously. And she ended up leaving after like a year and a half, and I am certain that my cohort in the drama club drove her out of like there's no way there's like I'm trying to imagine being a like in my early 20s landing a teaching gig doing theater like kind of a sweet deal and then
Hmm.
just discovering that like oh these kids are fanatics um so I would say that my fanaticism for the theater club at the time was probably one of the worst things about me in high school.
So were you? Oh well, never
I
mind.
guess I guess we'll never know. God, I can't wait to stop it. Okay. Our next suggestion comes from Mark. Mark says, my suggestion for 433 is a little on the personal side, so I'd understand if you didn't do it. Mark, surprised we're doing it. Could you speak for 433 on your lives outside the podcast? For example, are your partners understanding of your gaming hobby? How on earth do you afford/find time to play games that you chat about each week? Do you have any other hobbies? Um, I would say that I'm fortunate in the partner respect that Sarah mostly understands and will get in on playing games with me. We're both very excited for Super Mario 3D World to come out tomorrow, and we're gonna play through it together. When the Super Mario 3D All Stars collection came out, we had to like split it up because like I wanted to play 64, she wanted to play Galaxy, and it's like okay, who gets to play now? We both play Animal Crossing. So she's mostly into it.
Yeah, my husband is really like understanding. Like he's like, go for it. but he has zero interest at all. Like he didn't grow up playing video games, and so they just don't really appeal to him. It's almost like a video game like blindness. I think he's played a little bit, like a tiny bit of Mario Kart. Uh, we played with you and Sarah once, a little bit of like
Yeah.
Super Mario 3D World, I think, or New Super Mario Brothers U. I can't remember. And he's played like a couple of rounds of Tetris 99, but it's just not like at all something that he's interested in.
Yeah, but you've noted before that he plays a lot of mobile games, right? Like
Yes.
he
Oh
plays a
yeah.
lot on his phone. So
That's a good point. Yeah. When like he finds like a mobile game that appeals to him, he goes like all in on it for sure.
yeah, so I think for both of us, it's a combination of like our partners do it too, in whatever form they do, but also just like I don't know when I'm gonna sound like I'm old here, but we are old. Like you just reach an age where you're like, yeah, the person you're with has interests that aren't exactly the same as yours, and
Totally.
like you let them do it, slash you get involved with it sometimes, and like it's fine, it's fun. What are the other parts of this question? How on earth do you afford slash find time to play all the games that you play? Um, I feel like we don't actually play that many games.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. I mean, I think for sure once we started doing this podcast, I buy more games
Hmm.
than I bought previously because like I've always enjoyed video games, but as far as like for a few years now or before I did this podcast, like I wasn't buying very many games a year. I was just like following the news and everything. Um but I think what happened, and so I think compared to maybe other people, like I don't buy that many games a year.
Hmm.
But as far as like playing them, like there are very few games do I play all the way to the end. Like a
Hmm.
lot of these games I pick them up, I play for like a few hours, and then I either like move on to the next thing because it's being released, and so have to talk about that, or I just like lose interest and I'm past the point of like forcing myself to finish a game.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and that's another thing I think that comes with age, where you're just like, I'm done with this experience. I'm gonna move on to the next one. Um, but like, I also think that you and I for this show, we've always been like the only thing that we have that no other video game show has is the two of us. So like we're never gonna make ourselves play. I'm not gonna. Well, never. We have done in the past. But we're not gonna make ourselves play a lot of games that we don't want to play. So like we just pick the games that we're interested in and play those and talk about them.
Yeah, because I also think like in the early days of this podcast, like we would try to like play a game or play enough of a game that we could have like an episode about that game,
Right.
and rarely do we do that for new releases now, um just because like we're either trying to cram in a bunch of gameplay over a weekend, or there's no way we finish it, or we're talking about a new game like months after it's already been released, so we've kind of just like completely dropped that, and so it's taken off some of the pressure of like having to play these games. We'll pick up the games that are interesting to us and then sample them for as long as we want to play them, but there's no like pressure to like we don't have to review them, and I think that's helped a lot
Right.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the last other thing here is like, do you have any other hobbies? Um, yeah, I mean, we talked about the reading that we do or comics. Um, I don't know, other hobbies at this point. Like,
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic has changed some of it because like, well, again, we'll never
okay.
know.
All right, next we have suggestions from Patrick. It is not me. Random number generating. Number one. I have a vote for you discussing your favorite non-insurrection causing conspiracy theories. I'm thinking more like Supernatural, Area 51, Bigfoot, Loch Ness, etc. Mark, where do you stand on non-insurrection causing conspiracy theories?
So, uh, like of the ones that are here, I think Area 51 is probably the most realistic, and not Area 51 itself, but like I mean, at this point, hasn't the military basically just like admitted that there are UFOs?
Y- yes, but I mean, it's the term UFO is so funny because like we have it mapped onto flying saucer, men from outer space, whatever. But like UFO is just an unidentified flying object. Like it is not. There are unidentified things in the sky all the time, and especially now that we live in an era of drones. But like, yeah, even in the past, like, it's just because something is unidentified doesn't mean that it's alien.
What about you? Do you have a like a favorite conspiracy theory?
I don't, not really. I mean, I guess like Area 51 is a good one, just because like there's so much about the military and the military industrial complex as it like spins out of the early 20th century, where it's just like there's so much we don't know about what they got up to during all that time, and it's like a seemingly infinite amount of money and an infinite amount of like loyalty from soldiers and people who are involved in the army, in the air force, and all of that. So like, yeah, there's definitely more there that we do, and also I'm saying there's definitely more there. There might not be, but like that leaves the biggest question marks for me. Something like Loch Ness monster, like that's, I don't even know if that's a conspiracy theory, right? Like that's more of like a myth. Um, and like ditto Bigfoot, right? Like it's all just sort of like fun myth making, which feels way different than conspiracy theories to me.
The one thing I will say for the Loch Ness monster, not like the Loch Ness monster in particular, but I do think that like there is there's so much like unknown about the ocean and about deep
Yes.
water that you're like, oh, like really anything could be in there and we have absolutely no idea.
Oh, I love deep ocean. When you get down so deep that there's no sunlight, and therefore like the life that's down there has to like come from somewhere else, like from fish feeding off like whale carcasses, or the biomes that spring up around volcanic vents in the bottom of the ocean. That stuff's so cool. Doesn't I don't think it falls under conspiracy theory though.
I think you're right. Um, yeah, I don't know. I in general, I'm not like super into conspiracy theories or like conspiracies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Just like I'm not really into like supernatural stuff or like spiritual stuff. Um like I don't think there are ghosts. Like I don't believe in like the zodiac, or like all that kind of stuff. I feel like I'm too grounded and cynical now to really care too much about any of that. And the question is leading us away from insurrection and causing conspiracies. And I do think that there is like a big a big part of like the acceptance of conspiracy theories now has like driven people to believe things that just like aren't true, and then acting in harmful ways based on that.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And like I am basically not on Twitter anymore, and it's because like I found myself all like almost doing the same thing because you're like following a set group of like
Yeah.
people, and so it really does just become this like echo chamber, and it's so easy to like fall down the spiral of like, well, if like A happens, then B happens, then C happens, then all the way you're all of a sudden you're like all the way at Z, and like nothing has happened.
Right. And also none of it makes sense. And we end up like talking about this kind of stuff on the show too, just because like there are conspiracy theories about like what happened with Nintendo stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
like the Grinch leak, remember from the
Oh
Smash
yeah.
Brothers from a couple years ago, where it's like, oh yeah, here are the 6 DLC characters, and it, like there's like photographic evidence and all this stuff that, oh well, I guess we'll never know. Our next suggestion comes from Link. Link says, relating to the upcoming 433 episode, I wanted to request that you possibly talk about your favorite Zelda game. Now, I guess it is important to note here that this is us talking about Nintendo. This is us talking about Nintendo. So I just wanted to state that for the purposes of this episode of this show, our instruments are not talking about Nintendo. So for this chunk of 433, we will talk about something Nintendo related, still fulfilling the contract of the beast. Mark, what are your favorite Zelda games?
I think my answer to this question used to be A Link to the Past for a very long time, and Link to the Past is still like one of my desert island games. But Breath of the Wild for me has taken its place. I loved my experience of playing Breath of the Wild. I thought it was just like magical, and it was fun to be experiencing it with everybody at the same time and learning all the new things you could do or things I never thought to try that are buried in that game. Like, I am really looking forward to the sequel, but also I know in my heart that like the sequel will never be able to replace the experience of playing that first game for the first time, because just that sense of like unknown and discovery and what felt like the infinite possibilities
Yeah.
were, it was like delightful. It was so much fun.
I am a little worried. I totally agree with you. Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite Zelda games, one of my favorite games of all time. But I do worry about what the game is like, or how like I don't know how to separate it from the moment it came out in, right?
Totally.
From like here's the Switch. It is a system that allows you to play anywhere you want, any way you want, and here's a game that is similarly focused on experiencing exactly the way you want to. And there just being all this like energy and excitement and mystery around it. I wonder, like I don't know if there's any recapturing that, even if I'd never played the game. Like if I was picking it up for the first time now in 2021, it's not the same world, right? Like people know it. There are all these like exploits and speed run techniques and all this stuff that like the game is probably just like a different animal now.
Yeah.
Mark, you mentioned that you're off Twitter right now, so maybe you haven't seen there's a like one of these has to go memes going around, and the entrants are Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, and Link to the Past.
Ooh. Wait, what are the options again? Because I'm
Okay, so
assuming you're forcing me to choose.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good talking point here. Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past.
So for me, I think it would be Wind Waker, and that's based purely on I haven't played the game for at least a decade at this point, right? I didn't buy the Wii U remake because I don't have a Wii U, and so it's the one
Smart.
I played, not, you know, like I haven't played it recently, and the other ones I've played much more recently. And there is a ton I remember loving about Wind Waker. There's a lot about it I remember it being frustrating on the GameCube, and so Wind Waker for me would be the one to go.
Um, I'm gonna make a wholly selfish choice here and cut Link to the Past because because I know it inside and out. I have played it probably 50 times. I can play the game in my sleep. I don't need it to physically exist anymore to have gotten all the joy from it I'm ever going to get from it.
So if oh, I see. So if it disappears, it's not like it disappears from your memory. It's just that like from this point forward, you'd no longer be able to
I mean,
interact with it.
yeah, I mean that is tough. I guess that is what I'm assuming. Yeah, that I'm just all copies of it disappear.
Okay, for whatever reason I interpreted the question as like as if it had never existed, and I thought you were gonna say, "Oh, let's remove Link to the Past," because then we like when we talk about Zelda, we could talk about things that are not Link to the Past.
Although maybe I have to take that back because I do feel like I will reach an age where there'll be creeping dementia and I won't recognize anyone around me, and someone will have to put a Super Nintendo controller in my hand and put Link to the Past on the TV, and I will spring back to life. Like that is going to be one of my like core memories. So maybe I can't let it go.
Well, one thing I will say in favor of removing Ocarina of Time. Well,
I
that's a
guess
hot
we'll
take
never
that
know.
I'll have to save for another day.
All right. Our next suggestion comes from Adam at and extinction on Twitter. He says 433 question: what are your top 5 favorite Star Wars characters and why?
This one's rough.
This one's rough. Mark, I won't lie to you. I saw this in our Twitter mentions, and I've been stressed out about it ever since I saw it. Do you have a list here?
I don't have a list. I think maybe we can work through this together. Okay, so one that I'm going to put up there is like I think BB-8 would be in my top 5 because
Wow.
just like otters are the perfect animal, I think
Yeah,
BB-8 is
he's
the
pretty
top,
good.
is like the like when you I love R2D2. I grew up with R2D2. R2D2 is my friend. But you put R2D2 next to BB-8 in those movies and you're like R2D2 is lame and old.
Yeah, I mean, I think the oldness of R2D2 definitely comes through when you get BB-8 in the mix, right? Like, there's something like crotchety and like, no, I'm just gonna do it my way about R2D2. And again, I love him; he's my friend. But I think I gotta be with you. If I were to have a droid on my top five, I would go BB-8 as well.
So my other ones are a little bit more complicated. Like, I think of course, like Han Solo is a top 5 character. Luke Skywalker is a top 5 character. Oh man, I didn't even think about the villains. Ooh,
I
this is
know
so
it's
hard.
it's so tempting to be like my top five characters. They're Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Leia, and Darth Vader. Like, what even is the question?
Man, yeah, that's really hard. I because so for me, in in this way, you have to exclude Rise of Skywalker. I know there are people who really like that movie. For me, it didn't work, and I was really sad with how some like where some of the characters ended up. But excluding that, I think Rey and Kylo Ren are like really
Yeah.
interesting characters.
Oh, and I think they even get through Rise of Skywalker pretty well, really. Save like the weirdness of the kiss before Ben dies. But yeah, I think Kylo Ren is in my top five characters. I'm a big Adam Driver fan. I think he's great. I He's so funny. He doesn't even have to try; he just is. Um, but yeah, I think the arc of that character, feeling the pull towards the light side, but choosing the dark side over and over again, is so interesting and like a fun like inversion of the Luke Skywalker thing. Um, and for me, the sequel trilogy is all about like working out a Star Wars fan's relationship to Star Wars originally. And I understand that like the sort of meta navel gazing can be like a bit much for people, but like the how it's personified in Kylo Ren is just so cool and compelling to me.
Yeah, and I would put Obi-Wan in there, and I think Obi-Wan for me that love comes from the prequel trilogy, and it's not even so much like Obi-Wan in the movies, who I think Ewan McGregor does like a great job, but it's like Obi-Wan as this like expanded universe, not
Yeah.
necessarily in like the novel like expanded universe way, but like expanded universe and just like Obi-Wan existing in all of these like through all both of those eras is so like cool and exciting.
Clone Wars Obi-Wan has great like war dad energy. Like there's something very interesting there that I really like. We're down to a minute here. So also from the prequels, I got to say that Queen Padme Amidala is one of my favorite characters, largely because of the Queen Shadow and Queen's Peril novels by E.K. Johnston, that really dig into like how her handmaidens work, and how that like the costume changing is hugely important. I think Leia is in my like top five favorite characters. She's great. I love seeing the transformation from like war princess to like general who's still grinding at it after all these
I
years.
know it, but it's
It's
so
heartbreaking.
depressing. It's
Yeah.
so depressing. Leia's story, Leia's arc is so awful.
It's so depressing, but I love that she never gives up though. Like,
Yeah,
there's something really awesome about that. I also love Hera Syndulla and Chopper from the Rebels series. And we're out of time. All right, Mark, we have now done 10 of these. Let's take a little break. Our next suggestion comes from Jason. Jason says, "Enjoy the podcast. I love all the Broadway music and classical music references. For 433, go complete meta and talk about John Cage himself if you haven't already, or any other music topic. Avant garde, Philip Glass minimalism, any art music related would be awesome."
I feel
Um,
I feel
yeah.
like I should just kind of like cede the floor to you, Patrick. I can't remember if we've talked about like John Cage himself, and not that I know very much, because you were the one who came up with the idea for 433. I remember, I wonder if this is how you remember it as well. Like, before we even started doing this podcast, but we were talking about it, like meeting for
Mhm.
lunch, and it was an idea that you came in with that you were like very like excited about, and it's been like a defining feature of the show forever. And it's very interesting because it's like so specific to your knowledge and interests, and like not at all
Yeah.
Nintendo related.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think early on, I think we wanted the show to have a lot of structure to it.
Yeah.
And we still like the news episodes are very structured, as far as podcasts are concerned. We have things that we need to get through. And I wanted to make sure that we had a space for us to just like kind of talk and be ourselves. And I don't really know what made me connect it to 433, especially because it's such a perversion of what that piece is, right? Because like I mean, even the fact that we are like sort of timing it out like right now to 4 minutes and 33 seconds isn't really true to the like heart of what 433 is. We only call it that because the first recorded performance of it, and recorded I just mean like observed, was lasted for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Technically, however long you sit silent on stage becomes the title of the piece. So like if we were sitting on stage for 7.5 minutes, suddenly now the piece is called 7 minutes and 30 seconds. And obviously the fact that we are talking and making content of any kind that's not just silence for 4.5 minutes is totally a violation. We are not fulfilling the contract of the piece at all.
And so, were you exposed to 43 in school when you were in college?
I think so. It's tough to say because 433 isn't like I've never been present for a performance of it. But it's one of those things that like gets sort of thrown around in like music history and music theory classes where you're sort of like testing the bounds of what is and isn't music. And one of my favorite examples of this is a Lamont Young piece, where the the instructions are that it's for a pianist, and the performer has to bring a bale of hay out to the piano, and then two things happen. Either the piano decides to eat the bale of hay, and if that happens, then the audience has to wait until the piano has finished eating the bale of hay, or the piano decides not to eat the bale of hay, and the performer calls the end of the piece. And like that's one of those things where it's just like, is that music? Is it performance art? Like, is it just a theoretical exercise? And like I love that sort of stuff. It's so dumb, but like it's worth pressing against the boundaries of like what is and is not music, especially as you are uh like in music school, right? Like you spend so much time, too much time, studying the way Bach would voice chords or counterpoint or whatever, and you spend so much time in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, mostly German, almost exclusively white, old idiots, some of whom are anti-Semitic and awful, and just like carrying that tradition forward. And so like challenging it any way you can is good, but I feel like there are so many more like baseline ways to do that are more like embracing of what music actually is.
Yeah, I'm curious in your like when you were going to school and even just like in your music like playing history and career, like has that in your own music have you found yourself wanting to like uh push those boundaries?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. When I used to write music, I like to sit in dissonance a lot, and I like to find ways to use a bigger chord palette. But I mean, a lot of that is just like me sort of discovering jazz voicings on my man. I guess we'll never know the rest of that. All right. Next, we have two suggestions from Brennan. So I'm going to randomly generate a number between 1 and 2. The number is 2. Brennan would like us to talk about our favorite indie games because he has not heard a ton about them. So I guess this is us sort of talking about Nintendo again.
This one, for whatever reason, is like hard. It's difficult for me to like conjure a list of indie games that I've played because while I've played a lot of indie games, since owning a Switch particularly, and enjoyed a lot of them, they are not like top of mind for me.
What about Stardew, man?
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great point. It's so funny because I think of like the fact that Stardew Valley is like developed by one person is so
Yeah.
remarkable because I think of Stardew Valley as such an institution at this point. But you're right, that is totally an indie game. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do talk a fair amount about indie games on this show. I just picked up and played Cyber Shadow last week, the new game being published by Yacht Club, the Shovel Knight guys. Um, that's an indie game. I did stop like right at the end of that game because the difficulty curve was getting too sharp for me. Um, but yeah, I like that a lot. It's a Ninja Gaiden like game.
Yeah,
Um,
I really liked Katana Zero, which came out,
mhm.
man, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago at this point. Still waiting for that DLC, but like absolutely loved my time with it. It's interesting you bring up Cyber Shadow and Yacht Club games because I guess like you are 100% correct that that is an indie game, but also I what I think is interesting is like the blurring of the lines between what is an indie game and what is not, because like Yacht Club's games is itself kind of an institution at this point, and it started from this very like small indie game place, and it's not challenging any of the publishers, even any of the small publishers
Right.
at this point. But at the same token, it's like, when do we stop considering Yacht Club games like an independent, I guess just an independent publisher?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely the lines of what is and is not an indie game are kind of being blurred, and partially because, like you say, like when they originally put out Shovel Knight and had kickstarted that bad boy, and the reason that there were four extra campaigns for that game was because those were all stretch goals, right? In a Kickstarter campaign. So they definitely started as an indie studio. I
Yeah.
guess yeah, maybe it does feel a little bit weirder to call them an indie studio now.
But I don't think you're wrong. I think like most people, like I certainly consider it an indie studio. What I just think it's interesting, like the blurring of those lines, where like
Yeah,
indie games have become such a huge part of the industry that like in the most recent Nintendo's earning report, when one of the investors, the question that they posed was like, how come you, like, what are the reasons that you've seen this like increase in digital sales? And
yeah,
they attributed it to, yes, like a lot of that is like the pandemic and stuff, but additionally it is just like the boom of indie games, and indie games are such a big part of the gaming ecosystem at this point.
yeah. And I mean, have been a big part of the gaming ecosystem and a big part of I feel like my gaming diet too. Like I played Owlboy on the Switch. I played The Messenger, which again just off of Katana Zero, and Cyber Shadow is like a ninja game. Murder by Numbers,
Yeah.
um, Monster Prom, like all these are indie games that rule, like are so good. And I've got a bunch of others that are just like sitting at Overcooked 1 and 2, like some of like the best game experiences I've had on that system are indie games.
Yeah, totally. And for me, like, I was aware of indie games, but I didn't really play any until they started coming to the Switch. And so I've been doing a lot of like catch up this generation. Like one of the first indie games I bought was Cave Story, which that's been
Yeah,
around
that's right.
forever. But I love Cave Story, and that's not, like everybody knew it was great, but I just hadn't experienced it. And so that has been a fun aspect of the Switch, is like, because I never had like a gaming PC, and I wasn't
Yeah.
really buying them on the PlayStation. And so, uh, ev- kind of like being really back like into games for this podcast and waiting for those like tentpole releases to come, filling it with these like indie games has been it's been a fun discovery for me.
Yeah, and also if it counts as an indie game, Hades, right? Like I've poured over 100 hours into that game, and like Supergiant has a place now that is, oh well, I guess we will never know. Our next suggestion comes from Josh. Josh writes, "My suggestion for the 433 episode is chain restaurants. I wanted to pick something that pretty much anyone could talk about and relate to, and also something that wasn't too nerdy. Nerdy stuff is cool, but I figured you'd get a lot of suggestions like that." Josh, you're correct.
Also, jokes
Um,
on you, Josh, because anything that Patrick and I talk about is going to be
instantly
nerdy.
nerdy. Plus, you guys can work, or you can do your best Doughboys impressions. Congrats on the milestone. Keep up the good work. Ah, yes, the famous milestone of 433rd episode. Everyone celebrates it. Of course, Johnny Carson did his. Conan did his. Um, before we move off of the Doughboys reference, I'm a big fan of Doughboys.
I've never listened to an episode.
You've never listened to Doughboys?
I've never listened to Doughboys.
Is it because you're too familiar with Nick Weiger and Mike Mitchell as human beings and performers at UCB?
No, it's not. It's purely just like I never have. It's the same reason why there's like so many TV shows that people tell me are great that I've never gotten into. It just feels overwhelming to like start. But there was when improv was still happening at theaters and stuff, and you and I were performing. I was on a Herald team, and so Mike Mitchell and I are the emails coming from the theater would get like mixed up fairly often. And so I'm sure like we never interacted in real life, but there were a lot of times where we were doing handoffs on email chains being like, and I think you meant to send this to Mike, or Mike being like, and I think you meant to send this to Mark. So there was a time where we were very familiar with each other's email addresses.
That's good. Familiar with each other's email addresses. Well, I guess we can move on to the chain restaurants part of this. I feel like my exposure to chain restaurants has gone first of all, went down when I stopped eating meat, which has now been, my God, 6-7 years. It's been a long time. But even more once the pandemic has kind of stuck us all at home. But I don't know, what is your relationship to chain restaurants like right now?
Chain restaurants, like I grew up eating at chain restaurants all the time, right? Like and so I still like have a huge soft spot for chain restaurants, but living in LA, the chain restaurants are just not really around. They're around like the periphery of LA, but it's other than like fast food restaurants, but like sit down chain restaurants like a Chili's or an Outback or something like that, like they're not super accessible. But if they were, I would eat there way more often than I do.
I feel like there are a handful of Denny's.
For sure,
that are around. Like there's a couple. Like there's that IHOP, like right across the street from the In-N-Out in West Hollywood. I don't know.
That's a good point. Like chain restaurants, like as far as like franchises, like they are all over the place. Like Hawaiian barbecue or like Subway, like all that kind of stuff everywhere. I'm thinking more like specifically like the like dinner, like a Ruby Tuesday, like that kind of stuff.
Sure,
I feel
or like an Olive Garden.
There's just not that much of it in LA outside of like Cheesecake Factory. I feel like that's probably the most accessible one.
There was a time that you and I tried to go to dinner at Cheesecake Factory, but the line was too long, so we went across the street to like the Outback Steakhouse.
That's right, and that Outback Steakhouse doesn't exist anymore.
Nope, it does not. Does that Cheesecake Factory still exist? Probably. What was I going to say? Were there any chain restaurants that were like a regular hangout for you in high school?
Not a chain restaurant. There was like this like 50s diner that it went through a number of going back to like how late were you in high school? It went through like a number of name changes, but like at one point it was called Chubby's, and we went there like as like a family as kids when it was like first open and was like really fun and new, and then like eventually like that newness wore off and it kind of became like run down and a little bit gross. But like in high school we would go there because it was cheap and like pretty close to campus.
We used to do Applebee's all the time. I think like the Applebee's opened when I was like a sophomore or something in high school, and so we were like, oh my God, let's go hang out at Applebee's, which is really just like what like chicken tenders and like.
But I feel
that's
like,
great though.
I feel like the like 90s was a big time of expansion for these restaurants because there were a lot. Well, we'll never know.
We'll never know. All right, next suggestion comes from Martin. Martin has given us 4 suggestions, so I'm going to random number generate. Martin's suggestion is: what instruments would you play in an orchestral version of 433? Well, I mean, none, right? We would play no instruments in 433.
But in 433, do you bring out instruments like you are going to play and then you do not play?
Yeah, I mean, in its original conception, it was a man at a piano.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the like the cover that comes down over the keys. That you start the piece by closing the cover over the
Mm-hmm.
piano, and then when it ends, you open it back up.
So I think for me, if I were to like bring an instrument out on stage, I've always wanted to play the violin. Like I think it'd be great to be good at the violin. And
Uh
so
huh.
that is the one that I would choose to not play for 433.
That's pretty good. Um, yeah, I mean, I play the bass, upright and electric. I can sort of play guitar. I can sort of play piano. I can play the ukulele. So I feel like if called upon to actually play those instruments, I feel like I could do it. So I shouldn't do it for 433,
Right.
right? There was a I honestly don't remember how this wound up in my possession, but at some point after college, I owned a trombone, and I don't remember why, but I had a trombone, and I was like, as long as I've got it, I'll try to teach myself how to play it. This is as I was living in a brownstone in Chicago on the first floor of 3 floors, so like 3 apartments in this building, and was living with someone who played tuba. So occasionally, when we would get drunk and be up too late, we would try to play tuba and trombone pieces together. Um, and I was always awful at it. And I ended up selling it to my friend Jason. And I know Jason listens sometimes. So what's up, Jason, if you're listening now? Um, so my friend Jason bought the trombone off of me before I moved out to LA. And I guess he didn't pay me. Like I don't remember, we agreed on like $30, $40, whatever for this trombone. And then years later, I just get a Venmo notification that Jason sent me $40 for the trombone. It was amazing.
That's awesome. When
So
did you start?
maybe. Oh, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna ask, when did you start first playing music? Like, did your parents like were they like you're going to take piano lessons?
So not piano, but no. I mean, my parents are not musical people. We didn't have like music on growing up. My dad likes the Beatles, but like kind of beyond that, I don't know. Like my mother doesn't really like music. I started playing because there was like an orchestra program, and they brought around instruments for us to play, and I liked the cello in fourth grade, and so I started on that, played that for 3 years, and then in junior high school they were like, some of you cello people can switch on over to bass, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. That's big. I'm stupid. I make arbitrary decisions that will affect my entire life based on the size of an instrument. And so yeah, that's then I just sort of carried that forward.
Yeah,
And
that's
then that was sort of buoyed by my little brother started taking piano lessons, and so I had someone in the family to talk about music with, and that I think was kind of what spurred me to take it more seriously.
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, because I feel like a lot of, or at least my experience, right? My parents were like, "Oh, like you should try an instrument. Like you should try piano." They didn't force me to do it. Like when I was taking lessons, they were like, "You need to
Yeah,
practice." But when I was like lost interest or didn't want to do anymore, they weren't. They never forced me to do it. And so I feel like my experience was always like external, where it was like, "Oh, like you should try this." It I mean, I'm assuming there were times where you're like, I don't want to practice, or were you always pretty much like, no, this is like something I'm really interested in?
oh no, I was bad at practicing until I went to college for it, honestly. um Wait, your parents made you take piano?
Yeah, because my parents were really like, oh, like you should try a bunch of things and
Yeah,
see what you like. And like piano is something that, I think I was like in first grade or about to start first grade. And so I was taking like very like rudimentary piano classes.
yeah,
All of my siblings were. Um, and like I
I
took
do,
like a
yeah.
few like theory classes and stuff. And it's one of those things that like I think being able to play an instrument is like being able to speak a multiple languages. Like it's such an amazing skill to have. And so I wish that I would have pursued it, but that's the
Dang
end of
it.
that.
That one I feel like we could have kept going on for a while, but this is the harsh nature of 433. Our next suggestions come from Benton and Brian. They gave us 6 suggestions, so here we go, random number generator. Number 2, we are doing some cabin fever reminiscing. We are going to talk about our favorite things about staying at a hotel. This is a good one, Mark. This is like classic 433 right here. What do you like about staying in a hotel?
I love everything pretty much about staying at a hotel. I love staying in hotels. I think it's from like being a kid and being so excited to go on these like road trips. As a family, we would go to Disneyland like every year. And I remember, like staying in a hotel and being able to jump in the hotel pool. And all
Yeah.
of that was just like so like fun and magical.
Man, having a hotel pool is that's golden. It's so good. There was a time that my the band that I was in Chicago, which was a band called Sonic Weapon Fence. We only wrote and performed songs about the TV show Lost. Yes, I'm serious. We we were playing a couple places, and we played in Appleton, Wisconsin. And we stayed at a hotel, and there was a pool there, and the pool was closed, and we were so
Ooh,
disappointed.
that's
It like
that's rough.
ruined the hotel experience. Also ruining the hotel experience was our guitarist got so drunk and he ended up throwing up in our drummer's retainer case. It,
Oh,
it was it was bad news. Drummer was not happy.
oh, that's awful. I feel like for me, like one of the, because I in my own like home in my own apartment, like am fairly like I like things to have a place and I'd like things to be
Yeah.
taken care of. And so even like before I go to bed at night, just I like to make sure that everything is in order. So that way it's like, well, when I wake up, like the space doesn't feel chaotic to me. And so one thing I really like about hotels is like, yeah, like every day you come back and everything is like in order, the bed has been made, like, and not having to worry about that myself, like,
Yeah.
not
It's
is
huge.
a great like vacation for sure.
I gotta say that I've done a number of conventions over the last couple years. Obviously, not this last year, but um, whenever I've done a convention where I am also staying, where like my hotel room is either like across the street or like it's at the convention, um, that's the best thing in the world. Like when you can retire from con activities and just go upstairs to your room, or like wake up and be like at the convention within minutes, is incredible. This Pete and I did this at the last PlayStation experience, where we stayed like on the same block as the convention center right there. Was great that you just like wake up and like you're surrounded by people who are already there to like see PlayStation stuff, and like people are talking. I don't know, that's a very cool like communal experience.
One of the like for the longest time I thought nothing of like walking on hotel floors, my bare feet, like all that kind of stuff. But for my husband and I, for our honeymoon, we went to China, and one of the things like there is that every hotel room right there, they're providing you slippers that you can like slip into, so
Mm.
that way you're not like walking on the floor. And now like I'm like, every place should be doing this. Everywhere should be providing me, like everywhere I go should be providing me slippers so I don't have to walk on the ground.
I love that. You know what else I love about a hotel is whatever the breakfast situation is.
Oh,
Like,
yes. Yeah.
man, if there's a continental breakfast or like a little bit like a continental plus like eggs, um, that's awesome. Knowing that you can just like come downstairs and you got one meal taken care of,
Yeah.
knocked out.
And like I like eating at hotel restaurants, even though you're like, look, I know this is
Yeah.
overpriced. I know it's going to be like okay, but it's just like all part of the like not being at home experience.
Yeah, well, and honestly, like a hotel bar is great too. Like where you have a drink and then again just go upstairs. Like you take whatever is like dangerous or like kind of iffy about a drinking and driving situation, just cut the driving out entirely. Like you just drink and then go upstairs. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I feel like there is something like like less magical about a hotel as an adult, or at least it's like a different type of magic.
Yeah, I there is real magic in like not having to clean or make breakfast. Like there is something. Oh. All right. Our next suggestion comes from Matt Acevedo, former guest on the show, and good friend. Matt says, growing up, whenever I needed to get motivated or pump myself up, I'd hear a bunch of anime theme songs in my head. The Sonic X theme blasted in my brains as I ran the mile. The Dragon Ball Z theme would pump me up whenever I needed to finish a timed test. Even today, songs like Peace Sign from My Hero Academia fuel my willpower into completing whatever I need to do. This is super specific, but what are your go-to pump you up songs. Bonus points if they're anime or game openings. Mark, do you have any that come to mind here?
Ooh, probably the anime one that comes to mind for me is it's a song called Understar by the band Shocking Lemon, and it was the opening theme song for the anime uh Hajime no Ippo, which is like a boxing anime.
Uh-huh.
Um and I can't remember which iteration of it is, because I think it's been had multiple like series, but it
Yeah.
was and I can't remember what season it was because they switched out the opening song every season. But Understar by Shocking Lemon is like a definite pump up song for me. Don't understand the words at all. It's all in Japanese, but love it. And try to sing along to it to an embarrassing degree.
That's awesome. And you is that like one that you're singing to yourself, or one that you actually like actively put on to pump yourself up?
One that I actively put on to pump myself up, because me singing it is a disaster.
So this isn't anime, but it is a cartoon theme song. One that always just like lodges itself in my head when I'm running or biking, anything that I'm doing for like a long time, skiing. If it's like an endurance thing and I'm moving, the theme song to Chippendale's Rescue Rangers gets, and it's, I mean, until it gets to the like the chorus part of it, it's very like kind of chill and mysterious, and I've never understood why. That is, I don't even know if like "Pump Me Up" is right, but it's like get in this groove, you know, the sometimes some crimes, and I'm just like, yeah, 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 yeah. I gotta say that there's like a orchestral suite arrangement of the original Metal Gear Solid theme that like dun 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 um obviously goes on longer than that, and has like these like soaring string parts and stuff. I'll put that on sometimes when I want to get pumped up. um but also like the entirety of Anamanaguchi's Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the video game soundtrack, is it's good pump me up music, and it's good like head down power through whatever work you need to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. That it's I've tried listening to other Anamanaguchi albums and stuff, and it doesn't hit me the same way. Like, I
Yeah.
really like the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack. Another video game music that I really like for pumping me up is the Wii arrangement of the Punch Out like theme is so
Yes.
good.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great one. Yeah, and it's just putting like all those big band instruments behind the original Punch Out theme, right?
Totally. I mean, it's
Yeah.
absolutely just like a little bit of, okay, let's write a version of like the Rocky theme song that isn't copyright infringement, but it totally works.
On a very like relevant to now subject, I've been putting on the credits roll track from Super Mario 3D World, which again is just like an awesome like live sounding big band arrangement of all the themes from that game like jammed together. And it's so cool and so energetic. I love it to pieces. Trying to think of what else I used to like pump myself up music wise.
Yeah. I feel like more recently I've been using like instead of pumping myself up, I've just been like, okay, like what music do I want to just like kind of like
Yeah.
chill out or like have on in the background while I'm like working and that sort of stuff. And so on YouTube there's like so many different like Legend of Zelda with like rain sounds in the background, like musics that I listen to, but I also have been listening to a ton of like just like theme park background music, because it's a double hitter for me where it's like, okay, I miss
Yeah.
going to theme parks. I so like having like that like music is a cool like comfort, and then also just like some of them are great track loops, like the ones for like the Jungle Cruise queue or like the Tower of Terror at Disney. They're
Yeah.
like they're just like great, like totally way different genres than, like video game music, but just like I just enjoy, it's the closest I can get to being there, you know what I mean?
Right. Man. Oh, I guess we'll never know. One thing I do want to shout out, and I'm going to do it off of the time constraint there, just because you mentioned like sort of like lo-fi chill stuff. Um, uh, 8-Bit Betty, the man behind 8-Bit Betty, Brian Tio. did a series of lo-fi like Christmas music
Oh,
recordings
cool.
that are available on YouTube under the name Sleep Facing West. There's like 5 of them, and I know it is no longer Christmas, but I've got them like saved on a playlist on my YouTube account. They are excellent listening, very chill. Not really of the spirit of 8-Bit Betty, but like really, really awesome. That Brian is the real deal. All right, our next suggestion comes from Connor McCabe. What up, Connor? Connor says, I finally thought of a segment for 433, so here it is. I'd love to hear you both discuss the lucky articles of clothing you have had throughout your lives. Thanks, and I hope this isn't terrible. Connor, me too. I hope this isn't terrible. It's a good suggestion. Do you have any lucky clothing, Mark?
No. I don't really have anything that like I specifically where I was like I need good luck, right? Like participating in like a sports game or like anything like that. But for me, like there are absolutely articles of clothing that like you set aside for like special occasions. And by special occasions, I mean like I'm going to Disneyland and so I want or I'm like going on vacation. So I'm like putting like these clothes specifically because like either I want them to they're like super comfortable or like I like the way they look or I feel confident in them. And so that's like the outfit I'm going to wear to this event.
Yeah, absolutely. I one of my power outfits now, or at least that I consider a power outfit, is I have a DuckTales t-shirt that's like sort of faded, and then a flannel, like a dark blue and red flannel shirt that belonged to my grandfather, that I wear over that. And for me, like that is a power combo. I used to wear that to improv shows all the time because I'm like, this is the hands down the coolest I can possibly look. It looks good. It looks obscure. It's that I considered those lucky for a while.
And
sure.
I do think that layers are the secret weapon to any power outfit.
100% need some layers. I also have a pair of BB-8 socks that I have worn on any kind of like stressful situations over the last like couple years, where it's like the BB-8 socks is just like a fun little. I know I have a nerdy Star Wars thing on, but like no one else has to know unless I point it out.
Yeah. Oh, I totally know what you mean. I have like so many Nintendo socks because like GameStop had some sell where it was like you get like 12 or something for $4. And so I have a ton of Nintendo socks when I was and they're like short ones like ankle socks. And so I could wear them and it's like it's like a secret that I know but nobody else knows.
I also I've had winter accessories that I guess I don't necessarily consider them lucky, but that have like some sort of sentimental value to me. In college, my friend Emma knit me a pair of Ninja Turtles mittens. So they're green and they're 3 fingers. So like you put your index and middle finger in one, and your ring and pinky in another, and then your thumb in like a third. And so I really like those because they're Ninja Turtle-y. They're not super warm, but what are you gonna do? And then also in college, I was given a scarf from one of I worked as a residence life advisor, an RA basically, for most of my college experience, and I helped someone through a difficult night that they had. And he bought me a scarf that had the Gryffindor colors on it. And that again, not something that I ever considered lucky, but is like something that was meaningful, and that every time I put it on, I thought of him and that tough night that I helped him get through.
I feel like everybody has like maybe like 5 pair of underwear that is like the good underwear.
The good underwear.
And then you have like other pair that are not good. And while theoretically you could just have all pairs of the good underwear, it never works out that way. Like I don't even know that I would want that.
No, you need to have something that's special. Like, also, you need the underwear that's just like utilitarian. You wear it every day, and you're like, "This is fine." And not that you're wearing one pair of underwear every day. Don't do that. But yeah, you need to create a designation so that when you engage the special underwear, you're like, it is a special day.
Yes, you're pulling the lever.
Yeah, that's right. And look, we all need these shortcuts to like, no, I'm going to feel good today. And so if that's my special underwear, if that's my special socks, if that's oh, I guess we'll never know. Our next suggestion comes from Cretaceous Cam. Cam writes, "Hi guys, as an avid Godzilla and Pacific Rim fan, I would like your input on kaiju movies. Do you have a favorite kaiju movie, a favorite monster? And most importantly, what is your stance on the new Godzilla trailer? Hopefully you see this. I'll see you guys on Thursday." Do people see us while we record this show?
Lucky them.
Yeah, lucky them. Mark, how do you feel about kaiju?
I like kaiju are one of those things where like I like it in concept and and so I'd like the like ephemera around it, but I rarely enjoy watching a kaiju film. I think the most recent one I saw was with you and friend of the show Greg Smith and some other people was Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yeah, I forgot that we saw that together.
Yeah, I hated that movie, and
Yeah, it was
like not
bad.
to not to judge all kaiju movie. Well, and I thought like the Kong Skull Island movie before that was also not good.
Yeah.
So for me, a team up between like, or I guess a clash between the two of them is not all that like auspicious feeling. But I would
Yeah.
love to be wrong.
Yeah, did you watch the trailer?
I haven't seen the trailer. I just, right now my interest level for it is really low.
Yeah, me too. And also didn't watch the trailer. Uh yeah, I don't have, just like you, I feel like the concept of kaiju awesome. It feels the same as Scooby-Doo to me, where like I like learning about them. I like the like dynamics between the characters. I don't ever want to watch an episode of Scooby-Doo. I don't ever really want to watch a kaiju movie. But I do have a lot of memories of watching Godzilla movies in like elementary school or like middle school, and there being something very like, I don't know, like off the grid about it. Like it felt like, the non-sanctioned entertainment at the time. And because like the 80s and early 90s are such a like, prevalent monoculture of like
Hmm.
stuff that's out there. And when you start to peek into um the any corner that has like Japanese film or anything like that, like you start to see so much more. And like for me, monster kaiju movies were like a way into that. So that's, I think, really where I value it now, is like a way into Japanese cinema and TV and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I feel like the kaiju movies that I've seen the most of are the ones that are featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000,
Yeah, totally.
like Gamera.
Hmm.
Like those I've seen by far the most. And I think like uh they are obviously like taking those movies to task, but the movies are like the ones that they're showing are generally like the Gamera films were from like the 60s, and they are really bad dubs that that were produced for children but in like the like
Yeah.
talking down to children type of way. And so it's they're entertaining in that regard. And but yeah, that's basically like the most that I've seen. What did you think of, I never saw the second one. Did you like the first Pacific Rim?
Yeah, I remember liking it, but I only saw it the one time in the theater. And I don't know that I really thought about it since, but like I remember liking it.
Yeah, would like at some point to go back and rewatch it because I don't remember liking it that much in the theaters. But I know that it is highly regarded, and I remember some of it being really like pretty. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if I could go back and like appreciate it more now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a potential for so much beauty in kaiju stuff. There was a comic miniseries a couple years ago out of IDW, called Godzilla in Hell. And it's a kind of five one-off stories of Godzilla escaping the various like circles of hell. And some of the art in there is just stunning, like just gorgeous stuff. And like, the story is usually simplistic. Um but yeah, just like really awesome visuals. There's nothing really that quite compares to a giant lizard in front of a cityscape.
Yeah. I'm look I feel like there was uh did you ever read Planetary? I think that was what it was called, like the comic series.
No. Well, wait, maybe. I don't know.
Well, so like it's about like this organization, and well, I guess that's the end of that.
Guess we'll never know. All right. Our next suggestion comes from Jason. Jason says, I know, and this is the one that came in under the wire. Jason says, I know it is Wednesday, but I'm hoping you get this before you wake up. Jason, I did get it before I woke up, so you succeeded. He said, please rank the following Lego games. Mark, I'm going to start the timer while we read off the Lego games. Star Wars: The Complete Saga. Okay, not out yet. Batman 1, 2, and 3. Marvel 1 and 2. Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars. Indiana Jones, Harry Potter 1 and 2. Feel free to add any other Lego game. Here's
Patrick,
to 433 more episodes. Yes.
Before we go too far, so Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga is out. It was released in 2007, and because it's a compilation of like the older
saga.
games. Yes, exactly.
You got me, Jason. You got me. Yes. So, Mark, what is your experience with the? I feel like it's gonna be hard for us to rank these, right?
Yeah, I for sure have not played all of these. In fact, I think I've maybe played 2.5 of them generously.
Yeah, I would say that I played a fair amount of Indiana Jones, Star Wars: The Complete Saga, and I think maybe the Batman 1 and 2. I really don't remember.
Yeah, so I definitely played at least one of the Lego Batman games, at least one of the Lego Star Wars games, although I don't know if it was the Complete Saga or if before the Complete Saga came out, they released like separate games.
Yeah,
so I
they
might have just
definitely
played like one of those. And then I think I played one of the Marvel ones. I can't remember if it was the first or second. So yeah, so like as Lego games, I have no idea. I have no expertise. I could rank them in order of like my interest in the franchises.
Well, but I mean, before we launch into that, I just wanted to point out that I think my favorite Lego game is not on this list. I think my favorite Lego game is the Lego Star Wars Force Awakens game, which had a lot of the same sort of like Lego game formula, but did a really good job of mixing up in like different kind of set pieces where like you had to take over gun turrets and like felt a little bit more varied in its level structure than any of the rest of the Lego games that I'd played before.
And whichever Lego Batman game, I'm assuming it's the first one that I played, but that's the one that like I really, really, really had a great time playing that game. I played with my friend. Like it was our first time playing through a Lego game. So all of the mechanics and everything were new. We had a great time. So that Lego Batman game for me is going to be number one because it's the one that I have the fondest memories of.
Okay, so then what do we do with the rest of these? I think that Lego Batman, whichever one that was, and and Star Wars: The Force Awakens, I think that can be like at the top of our list. And then have you never played the Lego Indiana Jones game? Because it's really good.
I didn't even know it existed.
I mean, it's just it's sort of like the Lego formula at its most like Lego-y, or at its most like basic. And like you run out of interesting characters pretty quick, right? Like Star Wars and Marvel and DC are great for these things because there's like a bottomless pit of characters that you actually care about. But after like 4 or 5, like what Indiana Jones characters do you even want to see?
The chubby kid that hangs out with young Indiana Jones at the beginning of the third movie.
Yeah, at the beginning of Last Crusade.
Wait, so
I feel like
does that Lego Indiana Jones game, does it cover like the trilogy? Does it cover 4 movies? Is it telling its own story? Is it doing the highlights?
I think it was the first 3 movies. It may have even come out before the Crystal Skull.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, apparently there's multiple. I'm looking it up right now.
Oh my gosh. We're never going to be able to rank these. We don't even know. And then there's Lego City Undercover.
Right, which I think recent, or maybe not even recently, but that's on Switch now too.
Wow. Yeah, so it's gonna be tough for us to rank these to the point where we have 15 seconds left. So I don't know that we're even going to
Running out the clock.
running out the clock.
Jason, I'm sorry that we
mhm.
don't have enough expertise in Lego games to like fully engage with this one.
I am curious what the Harry Potter ones are like. All right. Now we are on to Mark. This is our final 433 of this episode. Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm a little sad to see that it's here already.
I'm a
I
little
feel like
sad
I
to see it
learned
go
so
to.
much about you, Patrick, in this episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what happens when we have to talk about ourselves for this long, is we end up saying things about ourselves. All right, our next and final suggestion comes from Alana. Alana gave us 11 suggestions, so I guess we could be here all day and just do another 11 of these. But no, we are picking one at random. Number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what? I'm gonna bump us up to 7. Just looking at what number 6 is. I'll leave it to you, Mark. Number 6 was rank the following sides: French fries, onion rings, potato salad, coleslaw, potato chips, fried zucchini, pasta salad, and baked beans. That was number 6. Number 7 is rank all the canon Skywalkers.
So I think we'll keep my vote is we keep ourselves honest and we'll
Mm.
do number 6. But I will say that we should engage the 7th one in our regularly scheduled 433 next Tuesday, because I guess this is good enough as time as any to say that like people were very generous with their 433 topics, and so people sent in a ton, and so we weren't able to. We tried to do one from everybody, but we now have a cornucopia of 433 topics to keep 433 going in the future. So Patrick and I no longer have to rack our brains trying to come up with one before we record.
Yeah, it's sweatily glancing around the room to try and see what things make us think
cups.
of.
Have we talked about cups?
Have we talked about cups? Have we talked about haircuts?
So seriously, thank you to everybody who sent in 433 topics. If you had one on your list that you were hoping that we would get to and we weren't able to this episode, rest assured that these 433 topics will keep us going for a while. And if you now wish that you would have gotten in on the 433 fun,
Send them in.
Send them
We'll
our
use
way
it.
for sure.
Mark, I'm sorry to say that I started the timer already. We are into the 433 on this. We have to rank the following sides: French fries, onion rings, potato salad, coleslaw, potato chips, fried zucchini, pasta salad, and baked beans. Geez.
I can tell you right now,
yeah.
for me personally, pasta salad, potato salad, and coleslaw are at the bottom. I just don't like
beans
any
too.
of them. I like baked beans.
I don't need
I'm a baked beans defender,
Mark?
but I think it's fair that they go at the bottom.
So you're saying coleslaw, potato salad,
and pasta salad. Just not my thing.
Not into cold mayo-y salads, huh?
I'm not into cold mayo-y salads now.
I mean, I will agree with you, and especially compared to any of the rest of these, except of course for baked beans, which I will put at the very, very bottom. I don't know. Am I wrong here? I don't know if I consider potato chips a side. Potato chips, they feel like a snack to me.
I will defend their inclusion on this list. I think that when you go to places, it'll be like, especially like sandwich shops or something like that, you have the option of like chips or something else.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I have a hard time conceptualizing eating any of the rest of these outside of the context of like, and you're having it with a hamburger at a barbecue. Whereas like chips, if you just open up a bag of chips and eat them, like, no one's going to look twice. You do that with onion rings, and people are going to be like, what is wrong with you?
I mean, that problem right there is the problem that Funyuns was trying to solve, right?
And they didn't. You made a bad product, Funyuns.
So next kind of at the bottom here for me are onion rings and fried zucchini. I probably put fried zucchini above onion rings just because I feel like you can pretend that they're healthier than onion rings.
I'll disagree on that. I like a good onion ring. When an onion ring comes out nice. Their umami burger used to do like a tempura onion ring. Maybe they still do. And I feel like that one is super solid. So like the batter is good in and of itself. I feel like that's a good onion ring, and a good onion ring is very good.
I feel like the problem with onion rings is like if they're made with real onion, is sometimes you like bite into them and then you
Yeah, and you get
pull
that
out the onion, and so
Yeah.
then you just have like the crust, which by itself is like you just feel like you're eating something that's terrible for you. There's no illusion.
Okay, so those we can say that those are like tied somewhere in
yeah.
there. Which leaves then for the top, I think potato chips and French fries. Mark, I'm gonna add a new entry to this: tater tots.
Oh, see, I don't care for
Oh,
tater tots.
you don't care for tater tots? All right,
But
then
I'm interested
them out.
no, I'm interested to know where you would put them in this ranking.
I mean, probably just below French fries and potato chips.
Wow.
I think tater tots are good, and is a fun way to have like a little bit more of a potatoey, almost like a steak fry texture, in like a smaller bite.
You know, I poo-poo tater tots, but do you know what I like are like the little like hash brown bites that you can get from like fast food restaurants in the morning. Or I guess actually in the glorious age in which we live, you can get them any time of the day. So I do like those, and I don't know if they count as tater tots.
Where are you picturing those from? The Burger King ones?
Yeah, I think I'm
that
talking
are
about
like little discs.
Yeah, where they're like little discs.
We're both making little hand shapes on our FaceTime call here.
But I think French fries are actually, I was going to say indisputably number one, but I could make an argument for potato chips. And I'm going to right now. And it's that like
do it.
Potato chips rarely get like soggy, right? Like French fries can be gross if they are like cold or they're left in oil, but potato chips are theoretically good all the time.
And look, with potato chips, you get more variety, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
The sky is the limit, and there are some amazing flavors of.
No, luckily, this is the last one, so I think we can definitively
So we're going into overtime?
We're going into overtime because I think we're both on the same page, and I would just want to like stamp this with the definitive 433 answer that I think potato chips are my number one.
It's so hard though, because a nice like hot fresh French fry is like a transcendent experience, but like.
That is true.
It's a perfect situation, only when it's perfect, though. Like,
right.
It falls out of that so fast.
True. That's so true. It's like if you get a good French fry, like it's impossible to beat. But how often do you get that like perfect French fry?
Yeah, I mean, almost never. And especially if you're now, right, as you're picking up something and like taking it home or having it delivered, like those French fries have died in the 20 minutes since they came out of the fryer. So, yeah, I think for the times we live in, the 2021 answer is that potato chips are at the very top.
I think so.
All right. Mark, we did it. We've done 2433s in a row.
Happy 433rd episode to us.
Yeah, I agreed. And thank you to everyone who submitted suggestions. Thank you to everyone who's just listening. It felt like a little bit of a strange thing to very pointedly not talk about what the show talks about for 2 hours, but I'm glad we did it. I had a nice time, and I'm glad everyone was there along for the ride. All right, Mark, let's close this out. That is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. I was about to say for this episode of 433. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you should share it on Facebook or Twitter. But really, if you're introducing someone to this podcast, maybe start with a different one. This could be like the 3rd or 4th episode you show them. We appreciate it when you share the show. That helps us out a lot. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ehlers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Cart Society. The Facebook page is also there. It is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ehlers saying thank you for listening.
My name is Will Hines, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.